Call the April 10th board meeting to order. First on the agenda is the pledge, led by board member Tiffany Johnson.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you join the board in a moment of silence? All right. Next will be the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion for that?
Move to approve.
Second.
Yeah. All in favor? Motion to approve the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Young. All in favor? Motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Have any visitors? Okay. Spotlight, Mr. Spurlock.
All right, spotlight was a special education coordinator, Miss Kate Kozabowski. She'd come up.
Evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity tonight to give you some updates on our special education. We are busy in the season of testing and everything wrapping up this school year. I am so happy to be back in Rutherford County. As most of you know, I started back here in January. I was previously in Rutherford County, then I went to Williamson County for a little bit, and now I'm back in Rutherford County. And since returning, Mr. Spurlock and I have had several conversations about how to move our special ed our special ed department forward and make sure that we're providing services in a manner that's going to be proactive for our student needs. So I just gathered some information tonight, and I would like to share that with y'all this evening. Some of the current challenges we face, as you well know, is we have a very fast-growing population here. And what we're seeing in special education as students move in is that the numbers of students, while that is also increasing, it's also a greater intense student need. We have had a very strong response to instruction and intervention program here in Rutherford County. The numbers show its effectiveness. So the students with specific learning disabilities, we are seeing that population pretty stable, even though we are having growth in students. But what we are finding is other disability categories are growing in our system. And in addition to that, we are seeing an increase of mental health needs for both students and families. And those mental health needs are impacting education for both the special ed students and our general ed population. We have a high number of students who move in that are in DCS custody. Some of those students have additional challenges because parents may or may not be those people that have the rights for that student. So we are working closely with DCS. We are assigning educational surrogates, but we still have federal and state guidelines that we have to follow in order to address behaviors with some of those students. And therefore, we're having to work with DCS, trying to get the permission needed in order to move forward and do some good program planning for those students. You'll also see on here that we have had some challenges finding and retaining qualified staff. We have had some special ed openings that have remained open since I've been present here in January, both in teacher positions, which I think are finally filled, but EA positions especially are hard to find. We do have staff turnover. I know we're trying to hire some of our behavior EAs and ancillary EAs that have tremendous worth to our school system, and finding those people, investing training in those people, and then keeping those people have been a bit of a challenge. We have had some incidents where the pool of applicants isn't always as strong as it used to be, so we're having trouble finding qualified applicants, and then sometimes we find after we hire them that there's been some incidences of staff discipline, and so that's provided some challenges for us as well. And then we are having trouble retaining staff because many of our teachers and administrators and EAs are finding themselves facing injuries that are caused by some of our student behavior, and they are not only is it causing OJI, on-the-job injury reports for us and that process and those costs, but it is also how it's sometimes difficult to get people to stay in those positions when they're feeling like that's a concern of our employment and part of the job that they face. For students, we sometimes run into placement challenges, meaning, you know, we've kind of exhausted everything that we have in the in a school building as far as services. We've done everything we know, and really we're looking for some additional mental health pieces. How do we partner better with our community mental health partners? What kind of contracting could we look into? How can we make sure that students are receiving those services in order to access that general ed curriculum as well? And then, of course, you know, we are always looking at how do we make sure that we're providing good services so that we prevent legal matters. There are times when the students and the school system, the school system and the parents all kind of see the way to the solution in a different light, in a different manner. We want to make sure that we keep students first and that we're finding good programming options for those students. And the process is, when we disagree on how that looks, they file due process, and we are welcoming to making sure we follow those procedures and those processes. We want to partner with families and try to resolve as many of those legal matters as we can, and we always believe that we're trying to provide the very best programming for students here in Rutherford County. But we want to make sure that we don't, with our growth being as fast as it is, that we don't get to that tipping point where we're not providing proactive services because we're not keeping up with the needs of our students. And of course, our mission statement is that Rutherford County Schools is to empower today's students to grasp tomorrow's opportunities. And we want to make sure we accomplish that goal for all students. And so Mr. Spurlock and I have had conversation about how we can look at, you know, how do we prepare all of our students for college and career readiness and making sure they have good opportunities. And behavior and social skills, we know that's a factor that holds a lot of our students back. And we don't want to lessen their options once they age out from our system. We want to make sure that we give them the right skills that they need so that they can be productive members of our community. So current numbers in special education, I know this is kind of hard to read, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Again, our specific learning disability numbers have been fairly stable over the years, and that is because we are doing a good job with response to intervention. We still serve quite a hefty number of students with specific learning disabilities in our system. I pulled these numbers in February, and we were at 1,739 students for specific learning disabilities. The ones I've highlighted are the ones we see, the categories we're seeing as growing in our district, and that's emotional disturbance, autism, and other health impairments. And I've just showed those numbers, and those are students with IEPs in those areas. We have other students in our district that have those diagnoses. However, they might be on a 504 plan, or they might not have any support in school at all. These are just the ones I pulled from our IEPs. Autism is a category that's probably one of our very fastest growing. When I first started here at Central Office years ago, I remember there was 11 students with an IEP in the category of autism, and now that number is 583. So while we have been known for really good programming for all of those students, we recognize that those categories have challenges. And this is the same numbers kind of in a breakdown with all of the federally recognized categories of special needs in our district. So the overall trends that we're seeing, and I've mentioned this already, specific learning disability, or SLD, still is our largest category in our district, and that's pretty consistent with the state of Tennessee data. And again, we have very effective response to intervention, and our teachers feel pretty confident in the programs that they've had and the training that they've had for those academic needs. The categories that we see growing are autism, emotional disturbance, and other health impaired, and that includes things like anxiety, ADHD, other health conditions that may impact learning. And students in those particular categories often need not only academic intervention, but social and emotional intervention as well. Their deficit areas include some of those behavioral challenges that we see. We currently do a good job with our social work services, and they are leading social skills groups. They're partnering with special ed teachers to lead those social skill groups. That's happening in all of our buildings. And we also have with RTIB, which is a general ed initiative, we have students who are on Tier 2 or Tier 3 behavior intervention plans. And our behavior specialists that work in the special ed department are also helping with those RTIB schools as they go through their training. And I mentioned a little bit about legal matters. Some of the things that we're seeing is when parents disagree with the types of services they're receiving, they often will come back after they file a complaint and they'll ask for compensatory services. So then we have to figure out, if we haven't provided enough of a support in an area, how do we go back and make those things up? They often ask for private placement. They ask for BCBA services, and that's Board Certified Behavior Analyst. We do have 3 BCBAs on our staff. We're really blessed in Rutherford County to have those people with those certifications. It is an extra endorsement that they have to get, so not all of our behavior specialists have the BCBA credentials, but we do have 3 in our system. And they really look at behavior from an analytical point of view where they can break down the function of the student's behavior and really come up with a good plan to address those that need for the child. We also have residential placement requests at times, and I will say that when I've had to research residential placement options, it's been a real challenge to find good residential placement services, and there's not a whole lot locally. So when we do have to look at residential placements, it is often out of state, and the services are often not as stellar as what we feel happens here in our district. And of course, when legal matters arise, it is costly for our district, and it also requires a lot of time from a lot of different staff. And so instead of having to invest time in legal matters, our staff 100% would rather use our resources to work with children and be proactive and provide good solutions and good services for them. Here's some behavior data, and I do need to note that there are some blanks there. There's a couple different reasons for that. In Tier 2 and Tier 3, that RTIB planning and programming, we have some schools that are going through that process, and not all of our schools are there yet. It is offered to us, but it is not mandated by our State Department. And so we are kind of cycling schools through a few at a time to go through that training and work with our staff. So some schools have a lot of students on Tier 2 behavior intervention plans, and some schools are not there yet. As our behavior specialists work with these teams, and our school psychs work with these teams, they have noted that it's good proactive planning for all students. It is very time consuming, and it does require a lot of meetings, and we do want to make sure that we're providing enough support at the school level in order to run good RTIB programs, because it is a very systematic school-wide approach so that expectations are clear for students, positive reinforcement is happening for all students, and it helps us focus on the students that really truly do have those more severe behavioral needs and those mental health challenges. It helps us kind of weed out the students that truly need those services, because a lot of it can be addressed with simple interventions. That's the elementary data. This is our middle school data. It looks like Oakland Middle has a lot of students. I don't think the student need is necessarily greater. I think they've been a little bit further in their training, and they are really targeting a lot of students through Tier 2 program. I often talk to my husband about some of the challenges teachers are facing in the classroom. He thinks, because he doesn't live in the education world, I say that he lives in corporate land. He works in business, and he often thinks that students are often all like our kids. And so, I try to tell him that our kids have many, many advantages that so many of our students do not. And so, including a mom who's an educator. But, so I think when he thinks of school, he often thinks about what it was like when he was in school, and we're both in our 40s, and it was quite different then. And so when he thinks about some of the behaviors in school, I don't think he has an accurate picture of some of the challenges teachers face. And I think that's true of a lot of the community, because, you know, when we went to school, it's really different than what it is right now for a lot of our students. But some of the daily challenges, and I got this information by talking to teachers and administrators. I had my staff reach out to them and just tell me, what are the basic things that you're seeing in the day-to-day? I want, you know, just basic, not the outliers, not the really, you know, one-time kind of deals, but the real true day-to-day kinds of things that you see. And they mentioned all of these things repeatedly, and that's distraction and disruption, and that can be verbal or minor physical aggression. Threats, both verbal and physical. Physical aggression, which is danger to the student themselves or to other students or to adults. Student elopement from classroom, where they're in fight or flight mode. A lot of these kids are victims of trauma, and they're constantly in fight or flight mode, so they'll get up and try to escape. We have sexual behaviors, even at very young ages, both verbal and physical. We have a lot of property damage, and we're talking about computers that might be thrown, chairs, desks, lockers, doors, broken windows or glass. And then, you know, a big concern for all administrators and teachers is that loss of instruction time for all students when those things happen. I just put into a chart, and again, this was survey, so I'm certain there's people who were not able to respond, or data that might be not collected because they didn't know they were collecting this for my purposes. But lots of our schools were keeping very detailed records, so we know at least 1,706 times this school year the teachers had to clear the classroom. And I don't know about you, but for me, I never remember a time when I was a student where a student was in such trauma and melting down where they had to clear the rest of the students out of the classroom for safety purposes. So 1,706 times that's happened this year. The de-escalation team has been called, and so schools have gone through a lot of training to properly de-escalate students when they're in trauma mode, and that I got a response of 685, if I'm reading my numbers correctly. Administration called to the room 1,144 times. Mobile crisis is called, and that happens when a student is threatening harm to either the school or or themselves if they're suicidal or something of that nature, 27 times. Restraint, 76 times, and that's only done by a properly trained personnel, and that is only in cases of extreme emergency where the student is in imminent danger to themselves or others. And then we've had 62 OJI reports. That was through February, and I can say that 2 of my staff members had reports a couple of weeks ago that they had to go to the doctor for. So, I mean, there's quite a bit of disruption happening across our schools. We collected OJI data from this school year, from August till February, and these are the incidents that were recorded where teachers had to be checked out and fill out those OJI reports. These were only injuries caused by student behavior, so we weeded out if someone tripped in a hallway or something of that nature. So we had 5 incidents of pushing, 1 where they were stabbed, and I don't know that that was stabbed with a knife. I think it was probably stabbed with a pencil or something of that nature. 23 where they were hit by a student, kicked. You can see, and then items thrown, lots of biting, and that happens often when students don't have good functional communication or when they're, again, in that fight or flight mode. Scratched, muscle trauma, and usually that happens when they're trying to block the student from hurting themselves or others. Tripped by a student. Body fluids is usually when they're spit on, or there was a case of vomit that was being thrown, and then bruises. And 1 in 3 injuries results in cost for the county, and we just gathered some numbers from the people that keep up with that OJI data. And again, we want to make sure we don't get to a tipping point where we're spending more money on these kinds of things versus proactive services for these students. The ultimate goal is we want to make sure all students are educated and we get all students the help that they may need. And so what does that mean? And these are our brainstorms. And again, I went and talked to my staff, who went and talked to administrators and teachers and said, okay, in the best case scenario, if you had the pie in the sky, what things do you need to make sure we can handle the student need that we're seeing in our schools? And these are some of the things they reported back to us, that they want to make sure that we have the special settings and services within all of our schools. And that might mean a de-escalation area or enough space that the students can, proactively go to take a break instead of having to clear a classroom in that fight or flight mode. Training, my teachers, I have some of the very best teachers in the state of Tennessee. I would put them up against any others, but they tell me often, we feel pretty confident in our academic knowledge and how to teach the academics to students. What we don't feel like we know is how to help that student in trauma. How do we help that student with the mental health issue? What do I do to make sure I'm not provoking them, but yet I'm making sure that I'm de-escalating them and making sure they get to a safe place where they can learn? That's the kind of information they're looking for. Getting access to mental health supports. We are looking at policies for the future to see if we can partner with some of our community resources and make that accessible. We often have families that have multiple challenges to get follow-through on that mental health care, and we know how important that is. And truly wrapping around that student and their family and making sure that they are getting the supports that they need. Options to provide one-on-one assistance to students. We look at that at a very case-by-case basis. We recognize that that's a short-term solution to a long-term problem, but there is a point where you need hands in the classroom, and we recognize that for our teachers. We do want to promote independence for all students, so we want it to be truly an intervention and then a time where we teach that student how to have those strategies so that they can have independence and success on their own. They would really like alternatives to isolation, restraint, ISS, and OSS. At some point, they kind of feel like they don't know what else to do. And we know that there's an immediate safety concern, so we want to make sure that everyone is safe in the building. But they recognize that ISS and OSS is lost instruction time, and we know that the number one goal of all of our students is to make sure we're continually learning. And then we want to make sure we're preventing on-the-job injuries caused by students so that, number one, our staff feels safe, and the students feel safe, and we are able to better retain our staff that we have in place. So request to consider, and please know that these are not in any particular order. Again, I surveyed multiple staff members, and I know I'm asking for some of these things in our budget, and I know that it's hard to kind of prioritize different things, and I know there's a lot of needs in our growing district. We're growing so fast, it's near impossible to meet every need, and I truly understand that. But we are asking for additional behavior specialists so that we can focus not only on the required paperwork that the state and federal law requires us to do, but to really have student contact hours where we're working with kids and modeling for teachers what to do, how to handle these kids, what we can do to make sure that the behavior plans are implemented with fidelity. Making sure that we have enough social workers who do a fabulous job working with our families, helping them get community resources, making sure that the entire family is getting the help that they need. Our school psychologists, currently we have 20. Next year we will have 49 buildings, which means all of them are in 2 or 3 schools, and they would like to play a much larger role in our response to intervention for behavior, RTIB. However, that gets really, really difficult with the current caseloads that they have and the fact that they're traveling between 2 and 3 buildings. And of course, we're always looking for additional special ed teachers, additional special ed assistants, and then the training piece, so that we're not just looking at academics, but that we're making sure teachers feel empowered to know what to do and how to help these families connect with the resources that they might need, and so that they feel effective. Most of the teachers I talk to, while pay is obviously important, and we don't want to diminish that importance, but they really want to feel effective. And if they're not feeling effective, they leave our profession. And I don't want to lose our good teachers if we don't give them the tools that they need in their toolbox. That's all I have. I really thank you for the opportunity this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have time for a few questions?
Sure, I will do my very
And
best.
actually, I was going to ask you, I'm glad you presented the wish list. Just a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned initially, of course, trouble recruiting and retention, and then, of course, it's on your wish list that we need more.
Absolutely.
Outside of pay, because, and we all know it's not always all about the pay either. You mentioned resources and that kind of thing. Are there any other ideas or collaborative thinking that you guys have come up with that we as a board can help you with, as far as what can we do, to help you recruit and retain?
Sure. I think one of the biggest selling points to Rutherford County is our support staff, especially for a brand new teacher. I know when I worked as a liaison prior to becoming program specialist and now director, when I worked as a liaison, spending that time with the new teachers, special ed is a really hard place to start your career, but so many people have a heart for it, and we love that because we can't teach the heart for it, but it does require a lot of legal knowledge, a lot of paperwork knowledge, a lot of strategies to make sure that kids are learning. And then on top of that, being able to handle the classroom management piece and the behavior piece. So making sure we have good support staff in place to work with those new teachers will be a selling point to choosing Rutherford County over surrounding districts.
When you talk about the on-the-job injuries, and I assume that since we refer to it as on-the-job, we're talking about teachers
Correct.
or staff
And
that
staff.
have been injured. What about other students? Do we have any statistics on that as far as behavioral issues we've had in the classroom with outbursts where we might have had other students injured?
I did not pull that data, but I could look into that for you.
And that's okay. I'm assuming that it has probably happened.
I don't want to speak out of turn because
Sure,
I don't
sure.
have full numbers. There could be incidents where students are injured.
I think that's less than our, because we do a good job of removing that. And one of the things is occurring is it's at the young age.
Very young
That's
ages.
That's the main issue.
Very young ages. I mean, elementary school is where you think you might not need as much behavioral support, but we're seeing a lot of students that are, they're victims of trauma themselves, and I think they don't know how to process that. And so then it comes out in behavior. So, I mean, we have very young children that come to us that have very little school experience, and they don't feel safe. And so they're escaping. And I think Mr. Spurlock's right. We do a good job of, that's why we clear the classrooms.
Right.
And so, I mean, again, and teachers will step in or staff members will step in to take the brunt of those injuries so that other students don't have that.
yeah.
I'm not saying it's not happened, but I don't have numbers on that.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad, and that makes sense. And my hat's really off to all of you guys because I can't even imagine. And I know, and that's a question, I don't know if anybody has the answer. I know last year in the legislative world, there was a lot of lobbying for more funds for school psychologists. I mean, Director Spurlock, do you have any, I mean, have they pursued that at all this legislative session?
It comes
I
up
haven't-
every year. You know,
Okay.
I
Any
haven't
progress
seen
at all?
I haven't seen anything thus far. It's a challenge, you know. One of the things when you grow as quickly as we do, and a lot of, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of our challenges come from outside, or originally from outside of Rutherford County, and that's the things that occur when growth occurs rapidly. And but we have, Ms. Kozabowski and myself have sat down. We've looked at some things. Obviously, training is a huge part. Additional staff, continue that, and training for those that are in non-special education roles.
Absolutely,
important also.
absolutely, because, you know, we believe in inclusive practices. All students have opportunities to participate in the general ed setting, and again, some of our students need structure, and general ed classrooms are bigger and they have less structure. So even just working with the general ed teachers to teach them some of the strategies and how to use visuals and how to structure your classroom and how to provide places in the classroom to help these students be successful is really important.
I think so many people, and I'm really glad you came and did this presentation, and I'm going to hope that we have a lot of people out there watch it tonight, because I do feel like, especially just in talking with people, just in kind of living day-to-day life, and they find out you're on the school board, they ask these questions, that the general population out there, especially the ones that haven't experienced having children or dealing with children that have these kind of challenges, they really are clueless as to what kind of expense and burden this places on our school systems. And please don't misunderstand me, and I'm in a soapbox, and I'm preaching to the choir, no doubt, but we need to do it. It's the right thing to do, but it becomes so costly. I mean, I know that one of the things you mentioned, the residential placement, I remember at one time, I think it was last year, somebody mentioning a student that we'd had to send out of state. And am I correct in understanding that we foot the complete bill for that?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
So we might be talking in some cases, I mean, facilities like that, and we're paying for out-of-state accommodations. I can't even imagine the dollar signs.
Yes, it's quite high. It's quite high. And of course, we make sure we have good data to support that decision, and it's not a decision we take lightly. And in addition, it's really heartbreaking to hear some of the stories when you're in those meetings. For parents, you know, you really feel for parents if they're at that point to have to consider a placement that's so far away for their child. But the options are few and far between, and they're not local typically.
It's unfortunate. Thank you.
Very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, and number 8, old business.
All right, substitute teaching staffing service. After evaluating the responses we received from our RFP for substitute teacher staffing services, the staff recommends that the contract for substitute teacher services be awarded to Staff EZ, formerly PESG, for either their standard or alternate proposal for the 2019-20 school year. The contract will have an option to renew for 2 further years. Our actual sub-usage during a 10-week period from November the 26th, 18 through February the 15th, 2019 was used as the base for preparing the weighted comparison. Then the usage was annualized for the total numbers and used in the tab in the agenda. Cost is 50 of the 90 points we used to evaluate the sub-proposals. Staff EZ standard proposal, which is in the second column that you received, is the second lowest cost proposal. Spur, the lowest cost proposal, simply did not have enough points awarded in the other factors to move them up in the evaluation ratings. 3 years ago, we went with PESG, now known as Staff EZ, alternate proposal because of the 97% fill rate guarantee. The yellow you see highlighted is the $246,000 is what PESG has paid from their administration fee for sub-bonuses in order to get the fill rate up. The blue that's highlighted is $220,000 is an estimate of the cost Rutherford County would have to pay in order to maintain Staff EZ's bonuses for working so many days per month. Our frequent subs are used to receiving this pay. The proposals are shown this way so that you can see that the Staff EZ proposals are pretty close in total cost if Rutherford County Schools was to choose to continue the bonus plans. Under the alternative plan, the bonuses that Staff EZ is currently paying to staff hard-to-fill schools would continue to be paid by PESG out of their administration fee. Since there is a performance penalty, Staff EZ will have an inducement to continue improving their fill rate. On other factors, accounting assigned the points for cost and record keeping. Dr. Anthony and I decided together the fill rate and the plans to improve the fill rate. Dr. Anthony researched and asked questions before awarding the points for the last 2 factors. Motion to approve and award the contract for the substitute teaching staffing services to Staff EZ, formerly known as PESG, for their blank proposal for the 2019-20 school year, with an option to renew to the 2 further years. So that would be for either the first or the alternative proposal.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
after some data that's came in just today, and also looking at how I ranked these companies, it's not matching up with what Mr. Sandvig's proposing. So I'm going to ask that we table this and get a better understanding of what's going on here. I know there's something we need to get resolved and we need to make a decision, but there's too many discrepancies here, and I don't agree with the numbers.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion. Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. We got a motion and a second table. Any other comment?
Discussion on it? I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
If there's a motion to table, there's no further discussion on that motion. So if there's a second, see if you get a second on that motion. Table, and if so, there's no further discussion on this issue.
Okay. Okay, motion's been made to table and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Take a roll call vote. I didn't
Sure.
hear everybody speak up, so.
Ms. Michaels? Yes.
Pass.
Preface my nay by saying I don't have enough information at this point to make an educated vote, so I'm going to say nay.
Yes.
Yeah, I too would like to see the information, so I don't, nay, I guess.
Yes. Pass. Did not. Okay. All right.
So, Mr. Reed, from rules of order here, where do we stand as far as discussion on this?
So the motion to table failed, so it did not pass, so the matter is still before you as a discussion item.
Thank you. I am aware, and perhaps and I've looked at some things as well, and I'm aware that there have been some concerns presented, but in conversations that I've had with our staff, as recently as today, about the selection process and the things that they went through and the due diligence that they did in this selection process, I feel very confident that they have made the right recommendations. So I guess I'd really like to have some open conversation about this, and perhaps Dr. Anthony or Mr. Sandvig might want to speak a little bit further as to the questions that are being asked and the process that was done in the due diligence in coming back to us, even after we talked about it in a board meeting prior, as to your reasoning with these recommendations.
Okay, so as Mr. Sandvig referenced, the last two items, and together on the third item down, when our committee reviewed the items, I'll kind of give an overview as kind of what we're looking for, I guess. When it came to fill rates for large systems and plans to improve fill rates, which was for 10 points, we examined all 7 contenders, and we felt like Staff EZ and ESS were our top 2. Of course, Staff EZ, which is formerly PSG, in their alternate plan specifically, we looked at the proposal guarantee, and then our fill-in rates currently at 7 a.m., where we are still making a 6% call-ins after 7 a.m. ESS, Metro has used them in several of their hard-to-fill schools and have been able to get some of their numbers up. And then Bedford County, which is a smaller system, has used them and has been able to have some success with them. I would say probably in our third category would be Kelly and Advantage Pro equally. Kelly, of course, had a bonding issue, so that's why I didn't mention them in the top 2. On the fourth item, recruit, retain, and train. Our top contender was Staff EZ. We were really looking for, in parallel as well, we were looking for face-to-face interaction, in-person enrollment, multiple online training modules for growth, and a lot of orientations that are on-site. Several of others had either had some of that or a combination. Some even included mobile apps and interactive videos. And our HR staffing group really believed that the face-to-face is a big benefit. And then the last item, when it came to employment-related issues on corrective action, our leads were Staff EZ and Kelly. One of the things that, we have the duty is to, when we get the calls, if there's an issue with a substitute, is to make sure that we fill out the correct reports, contact the correct people, and then we're also charged oftentimes with deciding whether the person should remain at the school as a sub or removed from the school as a sub or even as the district. Of course, and then also following, they use our current background and fingerprinting process. What we liked about Kelly was they have behavioral interviewing and a hotline to report issues that exclude subbing due to recommendations of the school and the district, which was something we found that was very innovative and something that we had really enjoyed in researching and finding out information. Several other had exclusions and allowing district to remove. Some said that they would help the district to do the removing instead of the company doing the removing, and we really need, if we're spending that amount of money, to have them help us since it is their employee.
Staff easy.
Okay.
PSG, I guess, came out first, but who were the?
Okay, so on the fill rates for the large system, our number 1 was Staff EZ and number 2 was ESS. They were 3 points apart, very close. The others, we called several districts, and some had seen declines as much as 6% over each previous year that they have used them, and some did not even give a guarantee of a fill rate, which is one of the things that we were looking for as a committee, knowing that it's definitely a challenge with the economy, and we even had one contender that we could not get a response from anybody, but the rest of the other 6 were really great about getting back to us and giving us specific points of data, even down to the hundreds points, just percentage points, just to help us to see the decline that they've had and to be able to make a comparison of similar-sized districts. They were very good about giving us a whole assortment of smaller schools and larger school districts. In recruit, retain, and train, again, we were really looking for, our criteria was looking for face-to-face, multiple future growths, looking at requests from, our teachers who have the subs in the room as well as the substitutes. So we were really looking for face-to-face or in some kind of blended opportunity with online. Some did not have it. They were more into 100% excluded, mobile app, never see the person, and we feel like that's an important part to lay eyes on the person. So that was a big deal breaker for us on the recruit and retain. And then in the employment-related issues, again, we were looking for paperwork that would create that trail so that everybody that needed to be notified was notified, that the teachers and the principals and the central office would have input, and then we were looking for people that handled those issues once we reported them, as opposed to them having us to continue to handle the dismissal of them. So we were looking for that report, standard report that was in their proposals.
I'm sorry, my mic wasn't on. Some of those things that you brought up, and I mean, to me, in lots of years in the staffing industry and understanding, what both sides are walking through, having been on both sides of the table, the things that we've required and asked of our staffing service that provides these subs, I think are very reasonable requests, even as large as we are, because I can really relate to the whole, the face-to-face and getting to know their subs. So and you talked about removing, and I'm assuming when you said that, you're talking about like if we have an incident in a classroom, somebody complains about a sub or something, and it's serious enough that they have to be removed from the job, that it's whether or not the staffing company actually goes and escorts them off premises or whatever, or if we have to do it. So that was one of the factors that was in the RFP?
Yes, and that was a big part for us that we didn't want to undertake that as additional, because if that was the case, then we should be their employer instead of it being a contracted.
Well, and it is a
Yes.
co-employment issue.
Yes,
It
yes.
absolutely is.
So we like that interaction and the paperwork trail so that we know what's going on at each of the schools as well.
Exactly. So can you share with me which of the companies that were in the RFP process agreed to taking full responsibility for the removal?
Okay, so we'll start with Steffi Z. They discussed how that they had the swift paperwork emailing for them to be removed or allow the HR to decide if they removed them permanently from the district. They had emails, a chain of email documentation, phone calls returned quickly on issues with background and fingerprint checks. Advantage Pro, we've had them in the past, although they are no longer the one we use, but they have given the Board of Education always the exclusive right to remove, and so based on recommendation, they were very good, and I'd say in the upper three on being able to allow the district to have a recommendation. ESS talked about the department will work diligently to help your team to hire an abundance of talented local subs. Spur said that they had a 3-strike system from the handbook talking about infractions, termination, and suspension system, and how they can do counseling to remove strikes. Parallel talks about how they allowed for exclusion of subs due to issues that were reported. Kelly's the one that talked about the behavior interviewing and hotline to report issues. Then they would have exclusion from subbing due to recommendation of the school and the district. And EduStaff said that our district had the right to remove any subs at any time.
Okay. And on the guarantee, when you talk about the guarantee of fill rate, you said there were proposals that would not make that guarantee?
That's correct. There were several that did not tell a specific average, and some specifically said, let me see if I can pull it in. Kelly said they talk about how they measured their fill rate at 6 a.m., but they do not give a percentage of guarantee. So several of them did not give a specific guarantee, and we felt like that's an important information so that we can decide if it's going to be something that we can work on our end if we see that we're not following through.
That's something that I think PSG has done very well. So what about the face-to-face? I mean, these are the 3 notes that I made just based, that concern me as far as where they were in the RFP, but also, what your take was on how well that was going to be done.
I had 2 big concerns on the face-to-face, which was Spur and Kelly. Spur was completely mobile app and interactive video, but no face-to-face. And Kelly was online pre-hiring and post-hiring with no face-to-face. So some of them were blended face-to-face and online programs. Advantage really had a great classroom video strategies through SDDI, and several of them talked about using their local resources, having the trainings where they could have them either at the district office or at an office that they would have. So it's face-to-face.
So in the final analysis, because you talked about the categories, but when you totaled all the categories up in the rankings, where did they fall?
In the attachment, you can see on the chart, I think it was in the tabs section, you can see page 31, did you say, Ms. Sharp?
Page 31 on iPad.
Okay. And so you can see the points, how that they lined up with Staff AZ being first, Advantage and ES coming closely in second and third on those areas. Of course, like I said, there's always the outlier of Kelly and Parallel, who had different areas that they were strong in, but maybe perhaps they didn't always meet the bond requirements.
Okay. And I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Spurlock. I didn't have a copy of this. I apologize. Okay. So the difference between the alternate and the proposal and the other, can you kind of clarify that for me again? I know I'm probably in the slow group tonight, so
And that's part of Jeff's that he's going to talk.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. The alternate proposal. The alternate proposal has the 97% guarantee at 7 a.m. The standard proposal, they have different names for what I call the standard proposal. If we adopt the same bonus structure for subs who work so many days a month, if we adopt that, they will give us a 95% fill rate guarantee. That's why we have the slight difference in the fill rate, because we would not have the permanent subs and some of the other additional things PESG does in the alternate plan to get the fill rate up, especially at some of the more challenging schools. So on the second column over, actually, what I did, because I'm a conservative accountant, I took, in awarding the points, I gave Staff EZ on that standard proposal 42.8 of 50, because I went ahead and included my estimate, looking at what made up the bonus figure that they paid the previous 12 months. I took 220 of the 246. And I added that into their cost proposal. That way we would have the 95% rate guarantee. And I thought that was the most fair way of presenting the cost. If you look at the number, the unshaded number about that, if we do not do the bonuses, the Staff EZ is the lowest cost-wise, the Staff EZ standard plan, $2,921,000. Advantage XPO is $2,933,000. ESS is $2,959,000. They are close. We had concerns about Spur. Fortunately, the tech guy called me right back from Spur. That is why I gave them a 10 on record keeping. As we have mentioned, that is something we have been very insistent on the whole time I have been here. We went with Adecco for 1 year. It was shortly before they had their international meltdown. My office, we spent more time trying to deal with the billing and getting the subs issues properly recorded. Y'all were paying me entirely too much of my salary was going to my efforts. I'm one of the better compensated people in the system. I was doing hourly clerical work so we could get payroll processed.
That's not acceptable.
I did not feel it was. We went out for an RFP the next year, and we went back to what was wound up being later through business combinations Advantage XPO. So that is how Advantage XPO, I do have the advantage from having dealt with those people before. I was confident when they told me they would undertake the programming, this workflow that we have on the leave sheet. As I said, we have reams of paper twice a month with 3,200 teachers and 500 to 600 EAs who are in the leave system, the EAs. We have reams of paper. Our courthouse, under the Private Act, they pay our bills. They want that leave sheet. They have not been comfortable going with what the normal reporting systems generate. Yes, all the software for sub providers generates reports that will show the sub, the leave date, the teacher, the type of leave, the cost, all of that. That works great. We can use, I won't say all Adecco didn't have that at the time, but where we upload that data to the payroll system. So the files that we upload will often have more than 2,000 lines in them of data. It's not a manual process. So after that discussion with Advantage, and the tech guy at Spur assured me they could do that, we gave them 10 points. The other responders only talked about, and we sent emails asking confirmations. I met with an executive from ESS. They only talked about what their sub-accounting placement programs would give, the reports. None of the rest of them would commit to, we will have this workflow generated. If we have a sub request to leave day, when he or she, I'm sorry, a teacher, when he or she requests the leave, a leave form is developed. It's designed to look like a rolled paper, that doesn't matter. And it is electronically routed to the principal for his or her approval. We have that accessible form. Any attachments to that form are accessible to us, I think, for 6 months. We don't actually need them that often, but sometimes we do. And as I stressed when in our pre-bid, pre-response to the RFP meeting, that is a crucial step for us. We've managed to go electronic with that. We really need to keep that electronic. Mrs. Nolan has expressed the concern that she would have to add another payroll person at the courthouse because of our growth if we went back to those stacks of paper coming up twice a month. So that is why on the second line down, record keeping. Yeah, everyone says they can do the standard. Only 3 of our providers assured me, and I asked questions on that because it was important, as we mentioned. On the cost side, I looked at 5 two-week periods. I think it was 46 and a half school days in those 5 periods. So I took our actual usage, full and half days, the actual categories that we had, our 70, 75, 80, and $100, $120 a day teachers, our actual usage for those 10 weeks, and I extended that to every vendor's proposal. Then I took that 46 and a half days, annualized it to 180 days. That's what I came up with the, from $3.176 million, and on the highest, if we went with the Staff Easy alternate, to the $2,921,000, trying to get a good firm number. Now, I mentioned, and I'm sorry for all this detail, we had to throw out Kelly, in my opinion, because they did not meet our bonding requirement. Another issue that we had, and I discussed with Mr. Reed, we had about half of our respondents not fill out the half-day rate the way we asked for it in the RFP. So we had apples to oranges on the half-day rate. When we awarded the contract before, that difference in the way the half-day rate is billed, you would not think it, has been, that drove the cost factor to decide the award on at least once. It doesn't seem like we have that it would be that much. We have a lot of half days. So I went through, Mr. Reed said in the RFP process I equalized. So if they filled it out according to the RFP, I refigured according to the RFP. If they filled it out according to the different methodologies, I standardized those methodologies. So I had apples to apples, oranges to oranges. And when I folded those half days in both ways, it did not change my cost ranking. I was afraid it would change the cost ranking. I was gratified that it didn't. But we could have thrown out the people who did not complete the form the way we had shown it. We didn't. We came up with a way to go ahead and do it. So I think we've taken steps. One of the vendors does not feel we adequately looked at their proposals. I met with an executive from that group. We discussed, and the 2 points that I raised, he could not show me in their proposal. That afternoon, I went back through the proposal and went through it, and their plan for fill rate was a plan of nice employee incentives. It was not a bonus structure. There was nothing in the RFP response or any kind of bonus structure that we feel has helped us increase our fill rate with our current provider. And there is nothing in the reporting, the record keeping to us that supports that they would be able to handle our leave sheet or do the programming to cover that. I did not get that assurance when I met with them. So Dr. Anthony and I, after that meeting and going back through the RFPs, we did, and one of our big concerns with them, I have never seen this in 40 years, 40 plus years of dealing. They had split the insurance, which is fine. They had split the insurance between 3 insurance brokers. It's fine. We initially ruled them out because we didn't think they were meeting all the insurance requirements, but they were. So we put them back in and we re-looked at the points, gave them a few more points after going back through the RFPs. Dr. Anthony, Chris Marshall in her office, I have gone over them. The purchasing staff has gone over them. We've tried to be fair and equitable in awarding points. And I think that's all, unless y'all have any questions.
Well, and just to clarify, and I'll try to shorten this up, but this is too big a contract. It's too important to the school system, and if it's being questioned, you know, I just want to help everyone understand, because I am at this point very confident that you all did your due diligence. And if I'm reading this correctly then, and if we do make a motion tonight, if we're going to move forward with this, and my feeling is we had already postponed it once to look at it, and it's been, what, already a couple of weeks. And I hate to keep kicking the can down the road, but again, with all due respect to my fellow board member, Mr. Young, if there are concerns, then yeah, we absolutely need to talk about them. So, but if I'm reading this correctly, I just want to clarify. You've got, as far as the rankings with all the points, and I think these categories are all extremely important, and quite frankly, if I were ranking them, if there was anybody that had a 0 in any of these categories, I wouldn't even have kept them on the RFP list, quite frankly. But so you've got the way the rankings fell with the total points. Staff EZ, their alternate plan fell first. Their standard plan, or whatever we're referring to, it was second. And then third in line was Advantage XPO, and that is the organization that had the contract prior to PESG, right? And even their points were a good total 6 points away from either of PESG's points, correct? And then ESS after that, which they came in at 67.1, so 13 points from the lowest number. Okay. I don't really have any other questions at this point. Well, other than the two of you in your team that did this, these two staff easy, we've got 2 different proposals. Which one are you recommending?
I am fine with either one. If y'all want to get the rate guarantee, we would need to go with one of the bonus programs. We discussed the possibility we could use those funds to increase our daily rate and perhaps accomplish the same thing. We've had discussions in this budget process of looking at increasing that. In the market we are in, we are hurting in getting certified teachers. Are often, they're going to go to other systems where the pay is more. I believe Murfreesboro City pays more for certified teachers. We've got areas of the county that, well, they'd rather go over the county line to Davidson or Williamson. I believe our pay rate, we need to increase it to the studs. But
So the regular proposal from them, the key difference and the point difference in staff easies was the category of fill rate.
right.
That came in as an 8 versus a 10 on their alternate plan. So, and we're talking roughly, what, about a little over $100,000 difference bottom line between the two? Am I reading that right? Okay. Well, I'm ready to make a motion, but again, Mr. Young, if there are concerns...
Please give me an opportunity to ask some questions here. Okay. I disagree with some numbers here, Mr. Sandbig. If we're looking at percentages, and that's how they quoted this, is on percentages, not by your...
Right. Some quoted by percentages, some by dollars, yes, sir.
Well, I mean, if you go back, you can back into percentages on every one of them. And if I look at it that way, And Staff Easy comes in third on the standard plan. And if you look at the alternative plan, what we're doing right now, they come in last.
Oh, I freely admit the alternative plan is more expensive, and based on the conversations we have had emphasizing fill rate, that's why we went with it initially, that we felt it had the best chance of getting our fill rate up. Absolutely. Yes.
Cost that it's costing us, I don't know that I want to pay that price. If I'm looking at this as a business, and that's what I'm looking at.
Sure.
If this is my business, I'm not going to spend that much money for what little bit of return I'm getting on it. So that's a concern for me. And we said the cost is 50 points of how we evaluated this. So I've got a lot of questions when it comes to cost, and we need to really drill down into this. And I've done quite a bit of time drilling down into this. And I don't see that this company is the cheapest company if you're looking at cost. I've got some other concerns. I mean, the name change. There's one company that quoted on this that points out that they've had over 300 school districts that have transitioned from PSG to their company in over the last 7 years. So there's some things here that we need to think about. And I don't think we've been truly shown a picture here. And I'm not sure the RFP translated a good picture here of what we were asking for.
Well, and my apologies for that. I do endeavor to give the board the best financial advice I can on any of these projects, and I've tried to do that during my tenure here.
I'm not questioning your ability at all. I'm just questioning the process.
Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Yes. You know, I understand bottom line completely better than anybody, but I also understand that sometimes, especially in this kind of world, you get what you pay for, and I guess I'm struggling with the numbers because I see where their alternate plan is more expensive, but when you look at the standard plan, I'm not seeing where the numbers are all that different from any of the others. Am I reading this wrong?
We do not do their bonus plan. Then that's where, by my analysis, I came out with a number, not by huge amounts. After you ignore the alternative plan, the next three are fairly close together.
Right.
Yes.
And I guess to me, there are factors in this whole process. First of all, and I understand there have been some concerns expressed, but PESG, in my assessment, has met our needs, has exceeded our expectations, and I also know that when you've got a staffing program of this massive size, just a transition alone is huge. It's huge for the incoming company, which of course that's expected, but it's also huge for you and your staff, and I just don't see where these numbers outweigh. I mean, we've got to pay for it, and I don't see that they're that different. So thank you for your input.
Anyone else?
Mr. Young, do you have some different numbers than what?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Is that something that
substantial.
you can share with us?
Well, I mean, I can't really get into details without really telling where each one of these companies are. But, I mean, you're looking at, okay, let's say 5% difference in cost with the number one company that came in. You're looking at 8% difference in number two. So, I mean, when you're looking at $3 million, these percentages adds up pretty quick. So that's where I have my concerns. I just don't think we have done our due diligence here. I think we did a very good job at doing the RFP. I think a lot of the vendors were confused on how they quoted the jobs. So it's not the way I like to do business. So.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Young, I'll make sure that I'm clear here. No matter what we put in this blank here for PESG, at least for right now, you're not in favor of it. Is that fair?
No, sir. I mean,
Sir?
I'm looking at cost.
Yes, sir.
They're not the cheapest company. In my opinion, they rank third. If we keep the same plan we got right now, they rate dead last.
Thank you.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, and again, I'll just echo my feelings that our staff has, I feel like they have done their due diligence well. I don't think these numbers, again, when you look at the alternatives that you're giving up in some of these points in other areas as far as service, are as big a concern perhaps as others might feel. So I am prepared at this time. I'd like to make a motion to award the contract for substitute teaching staffing to Staff Easy, formerly PESG, for their standard plan. This is the one that would be a less bottom line cost to us, correct? I call it standard versus the alternate. Proposal for the 2019-2020 school year with an option to renew for 2 further years.
Okay, Ms. Moore made a motion to approve Easy staff for their standard plan, right?
Correct. Well, that's what I called it because it really doesn't have a name other than the alternative. So I think it's okay to designate it that way.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I have a question. Can I ask a question? What consideration would we be giving to bringing in a new agency and the cost that would incur, and the man hours that would incur?
We would have to train the bookkeepers, some meetings with the teachers, which we do whenever we switch vendors. We probably would wind up with a different sub-finder systems. I hope sub-finder is a trade name. But there are 3 or 4 systems out there. So, but they are slightly different. Yeah. And they're going through acquisitions and changing names like crazy on us.
So we'd be talking more hours?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'm going to second that because sometimes the cheapest isn't always the best or the least expensive. And I think we probably would incur some cost with that to retrain the staff that might make it a wash as far as the difference in the cost.
Do we have a second?
She did. She was a second.
You seconded? Okay, thank you. Okay. All those in favor of awarding Staff EZ their standard proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Ms. Michaels, you call the roll.
Yes.
No.
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 Yes.
No. Okay. do we go from here?
I was going to ask you the same question. We have to have another motion.
Can I make a motion that we table this again until we have a chance to look at the,
If you want, I don't know what the board wants to do. It's still, the item is an item for debate tonight still. If someone wants to make a motion for a new RFP, if someone wants to go back and ask for additional information, that's something you can do. If you want to table it to an upcoming meeting, you can do that as well. So if someone wants to make a motion to award the contract to somebody else other than PSG, that's something the board can do as well.
Our next board meetings are on the 24th and 25th.
that's all I'm asking for is we get some time here to really analyze this information and try to clarify some things. I'm not comfortable offering it to anybody at this point in time. I just think we need to do our due diligence, do our homework, and figure out what's the best solution for this. And that's the reason I asked to table it until we come to our next meeting.
Have a second? Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Okay, motion's made to table it again, so we have a second. Ms. Michaels, I'll ask you to call the roll again.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No. No.
Yes. Okay. Let's move on to B, Stop It Solution Contract.
Stop It Solution Contract. Stop It is a mobile and web-based incident software that allows students and administration to communicate anonymously to maintain a positive school climate. Students can report anonymously via a mobile app or a phone hotline service for bullying, cyberbullying, inappropriate teacher and student relationships, violence, threats, hazing, weapons, possession, drug, alcohol, substance abuse, and intolerance discrimination. This package also includes dedicated incident screening service which reviews and triages the incoming reports. Stop It will provide a streamlined process and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of investigations with Stop It case management system. Contract details, July the 1st, 2019 through June the 30th, 2020. Total contract fees of $25,850. Motion to approve Title IV funds to pay for Stop It Solutions, mobile and web-based incident software that allows students and administrators to communicate anonymously to maintain a positive school climate. Title IV funds will pay 100% of this contract.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second? Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 9.
That's the Social Sentinel. This is our software that monitors our I'm lost here. You want to come up here and explain it again? Social media, thank you. All right.
Is the program I talked about yesterday, which will monitor our social media activity and alert us to possible threats of all levels. They have agreed to provide us this on a one-year contract of $54,000, which will match up with the remaining Title IV funds that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Graham.
All right, motion to approve the software package for Social Sentinel as presented will cost of 1 year at $54,000 to be funded with Title IV funds.
Okay. Have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, ma'am. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 10, Title III.
Title III extended contracts. The ESL department will be conducting a 6-week summer school program at Smyrna Middle School, funded completely by Title III funds. These funds will provide 3 teachers, extended contracts, and transportation costs. The dates of the summer school are from June the 3rd to July the 12th of 2019. The time is from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Ms. Abdel Mesa and Ms. Vigil and Ms. Anand have agreed to supervise the summer school program. CHIP Industries will receive $2,668 to provide transportation. Motion to approve Rutherford County Schools Title III funded contract with Mervat Abdel Mesa, Megan Vigil, and Sweetie Anand and CHIP Industries for a 6-week summer school program to be held at Smyrna Middle School.
Okay. Any questions? Have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Second. Ms. Sharp, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tenure.
All right, next list is of 100 or so teachers that meet the following criteria for tenure according to the new tenure law. They have to hold a valid Tennessee teaching license, have served in Rutherford County Schools for 5 years or 45 months within a 7-year period, and the last 2 in a regular, not an interim position. Have demonstrated an overall performance of above expectations or significantly above expectation on the team evaluation during the last 2 consecutive years of a 5-year period, or if held tenure under previous guidelines and return to Rutherford County Schools, and they meet a 2-year probationary period for tenure to be reactivated.
Pages there.
A lot of pages. Motion to approve the recommendation of the Director of Schools to award tenure to the teachers who meet the criteria for the 2018-2019 school year.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Second. Thank you, Mr. Young. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Courses offered.
Courses offered for credit, grades 9-12 for the 2019-20 school year, found on tab 4. The instruction department is requesting permission to offer the courses listed in the attachment for the 2019-20 school year under the following guidelines. Board of Education Policy 4.201 states in part, a listing of courses offered for credit in grades 9 through 12 will be approved annually by the board. Motion to approve the 2019-20 course offering list for Rutherford County High Schools as presented.
Questions? You got a question? You moved to approve.
I thought he said move or approve, I'm sorry. Did I jump again?
No, you did.
You can move to approve.
I'll second.
I think Ms. Sharp wants this meeting over.
Motion's been made to approve and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, special course request.
Okay, special course request found on tab 5. The instruction department is requesting permission to make an application to offer credit for special courses under the following guidelines. Rule 0520-1-3-.05-2A. Local school systems may offer special courses not listed in the 0520-1-3-.06 on an experimental basis. The Commissioner of Education must approve each course in advance each year. Rutherford County High Schools are requesting approving the following special course requests: positive psychology, anthropology, and etymology, Shakespeare 2, African American history, global diplomacy, Native American history, U.S. presidency, focus on adulthood and special ed, introductions to self-advocacy and special ed, music history, environmental tech 1, environmental tech 2, and film and TV studies. Motion to approve the 2019-20 special course request for the Rutherford County High Schools as presented.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. 14.
Textbook adoption, report ed dash 5009 for social studies you find on tab 6. School systems are required to submit textbook adoptions annually on forms provided by the Tennessee Department of Education. The elementary, middle, and high school textbook committees are recommending the purchase of the social studies textbooks listed for the use beginning in 2019-20 through 2023-24 school years. Motion to approve social studies textbook adoption for middle, high, and high schools as presented.
Have a motion to approve? Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Second? Thank you, Mr. Hodge. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 15.
Textbook adoption report ed 5009 for world languages found on tab 7. School systems are required to submit textbook adoptions annually on forms provided by the Tennessee Department of Education. The high school textbook committees are recommending the purchase of the world language textbooks listed for use beginning 2019-20 school year through the 2023-2024 school years. Motion to approve the world language textbook adoption for high schools as presented.
Okay, have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Facilities use.
Facility used approved for exemption pursuant to Board Policy 3.206, public education schools and institutions, post-secondary education institutions, private universities, colleges, governmental entities, or agencies that provide benefits to the Rutherford County school system or have an in-kind relationship approved by the Director of Schools may request the Board of Education to allow an exemption for the use of facilities fee, which the Board may allow or deny based upon the details of specific requests. The following groups qualify for the exemption. Motion to approve the following groups requesting fee waivers for the use of facility pursuant to Policy 3.206.
Okay, have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Second? Ms. Sharp, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I have one question on this. In the past, Rutherford County Conservation Board, we have given them a blanket coverage, so they don't have to come back to every school. Is that okay?
That's correct, and we have a standing memorandum of understanding with them that reflects that same thing.
Thank you. All right. 17, student discipline.
Student discipline appeal. The board has been requested to review the March 15, 2019 decision of the Disciplinary Hearing Authority to uphold the decision to remand a student to alternative school. The student was remanded for conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline. This review is pursuant to the provisions of Policy 6.317. The board shall either review the record or grant a second hearing. If the board chooses to review the record, it shall, 1, affirm the decision of the hearing authority, or 2, modify the decision to a lesser penalty, or 3, grant a hearing before the board. If the board chooses to grant a hearing will be scheduled at a later date at which the board may, 1, affirm the decision of the hearing authority, or 2, modify the decision of any matter, or 3, impose a more severe penalty than that of the hearing authority.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we affirm the decision of the hearing authority. And for the first time in a long time, we haven't had any of these, but to thank them for that service, which is oftentimes very painful.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. We got a motion to affirm the decision of the hearing authority. Have a second?
So, Mr. Chairman, there's no one here to speak on behalf of the appeal?
Members of it's a review of the record only.
Ah, okay, because I know sometimes we would have the appealing parent or whatever speaking, so I just wanted to make sure. Sorry.
That would be next if the guardian wishes to do that.
Okay, I will second that motion then.
Okay. Motion been made and second to affirm hearing authority. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Insurance update.
The presentation as given last night stands. It's a FYI.
Thank you. Okay. Director's update.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with the youth science. If you look at the single page there, that's the snapshot of what was funded this year for our 8th graders. Take the youth science, which is an aptitude test. As you can look by school, how many participated. It's also broken down by female and male. And if you'll look at the first graph there at the top, you'll notice that the comparison of interest to aptitude. And obviously there's a little bit of a misalignment there. And down below there, the same thing, they show the interest, this is particularly, I think, talking about females, the interest as opposed to aptitude. So this is another opportunity for us as education providers to make sure that we're providing a pathway for success for all of our students and letting them reflect and discover how talented they may or may not be in certain areas. The second was an executive summary, and primarily what the main findings is looking at the talent pipeline, and as it relates to industry and our workforce, and how it relates to some of the aptitudes that our students have. You know, and there's one statement that kind of jumps out at you, and you'll notice there at the very bottom of the first page, it says, in short, there may be a skills gap in some industries, but there is no talent gap. It says the students have the ability to perform in these high-demand careers. And the third page, let's skip on over to the 4th page, where it says how to use the report. We've kind of looked at that all right, but go over to the 5th page. This is the one that kind of jumps out: industry, engineering, manufacturing. You'll notice the graph shows interest is designated, I guess it's in a red, and aptitude in blue. And then you'll notice the number. For example, the total there's 1,799 that took this test that were in those high schools. 1,799 students had an aptitude for engineering. However, only 935 of them actually had an interest. Now, the number you see in between the two bars there is 164. Those are the ones that actually had the interest and the aptitude. Now, if you'll look over, breaking it down by the female and male, the thing that jumps out is there was 975 females that took this assessment, took this test, and they had the aptitude, yet only 176 of them had the interest. And only 17 actually had both interest and aptitude. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to do early on. We're trying to identify those things where our students we can give them an experience where they can perhaps maybe take this and go on and get further education, and then go, of course, the last thing is career. That's the big thing. You know, we talk a little bit about, and the State Department does, and I agree with it, college and career ready, but actually college is not the end. Career is the end. And as I spoke last night, it's incumbent upon us as educators to make sure that we're gathering all the information that we can to successfully, counsel our students to go in areas that they have an innate ability. And this is what we're trying to do, and I think it's going to work. You can go all the way through here. There's a variety of different things, analysts, IT programmers, and there's where it comes in where they're saying we actually have the aptitude. And not only does this help us give them career advice or some advice, but it helps us develop programs. It helps us develop programs in our career and technical education classes that meet the needs of our students. And it opens up, I've told this story many times, I'll tell it again, you'll have to bear with me. But we had a young lady, when I was at Oakland, when we started our mechatronics program, and we had an interest survey. Are you interested? So we took them in, we brought them in, and there was a lot of them signed up for it, and then we gave them some assessment. And we got that group down a little bit, but to make a long story short, she went on and completed the program, left graduated Oakland High School with a level 1 Siemens certification, went to MTSU, did some internships. She went over to Germany and did an internship over in Germany with Siemens over there. She's graduating this spring with a level 3 Siemens certification. She will be able to name her job. Now, her statement was, I never knew that this was something I could do. So this is going to provide us, and as the board, you provided this funding. I mean, you made this one of your things that you wanted to put in the budget last year, and it's going to pay dividends down the road. I'm confident.
Mr.
Spurlock, if I may, and first of all, I love these results, and I'm so pleased that we made the decision to do this. And just real quickly, because I know our meeting is running long, but just want to make a mention that I had the privilege of spending almost a couple of hours over at Central Magnet School today because our seniors did their thesis presentations, and of course a good number of them were engineering related. And I just found it fascinating that the more I walked to the booth, the more young ladies I saw presenting these engineering ideas and programs. And of course I can remember years ago when I would recruit for companies that were looking for engineers or CCAD employees, those kind of technical skills, they would call begging for female engineers or employees. So yeah, the fact that this has opened the door for some of those young ladies with that inclination to be able to walk through those doors and do what they're doing, I think it's awesome.
Mr. Spurlock, if I may, for the benefit of us newbies, I know this is middle school. Is this a subscription that we do, or they go to a website and take the test?
What we do is we pay for an assessment tool on the website. It's more of an analytical type thinking. They have a design. If for some of you that may be as old as I am, we took the ASVAB. I mean, anyone take the ASVAB test? Back when you were in high school, everyone had to do it when I was in there. But anyway, it's like a better ASVAB test.
And do you remember the cost on that, just for general?
I can't remember what we budgeted in. It was like $750 a school. I know that. That was the baseline. It was $750 a school. For us to get back reports like this, it was a little additional stuff, because what they can actually provide for you, which is kind of unique, is not only can they give you this information, but they can align this with a trajectory of what type of training, what type of education that you need to go further, and they can give you a breakdown where in the United States where these institutions are located for training, and then they can also give you an average starting pay, and longevity, and on what it pays.
This is absolutely good information to have, because I'll tell you, my son probably will not last through a four-year college, but I have pretty high hopes for the career technical field for him. Thank you.
I got a question on this. We've got so many, or so few females that are interested in this. Is there anything else we can do to get them interested?
That's a great question, and that's one of the things we've got it broken down by schools too, and in one of the councils that I'm a member in, you know, they were brainstorming of what is it, how do we get this, how does this take place? And particularly what I said, instead of having a huge job fair, how about, like, for example, if it's Central Magnet, wherever it may be, how about sending our engineers out to those schools specifically where there's a large number of students with the aptitude, including females, and exposing them to that, and at the same time, having our guidance counselors, which you're already doing, is going over this data with them. You know, and that was one of the things the industry was getting kind of not connecting. Let's go drill down. That's what we do in education. We drill down to where, you know, where the rubber meets the road. And if we're just throwing a dart at it like we've done for decades and decades, then we're going to have some hits and we're going to have some misses.
Mm-hmm. We put 42,000 for the budget, anticipating 4,200, possibly taking it at $10 a piece.
Right, that's correct. And we have it in our budget this year, is that correct? That's it.
All right. Ms. Johnson, ELM?
I will be brief, but we have a few things. Three specific pieces of legislation that we were watching this week, particularly the House Bill 939, Senate Bill 795, is the ESA legislation. Rep. Lambert, Senator Gresham, as of today, the House bill was recommended for passage and referred to House Finance, Ways and Means. Ended up in the Senate Education, which today was its last meeting, I understand, and they also referred it to Finance. It's my understanding that they added an additional amendment to that piece of legislation in the Senate, so the House hasn't seen that amendment yet, to my understanding, but it will cap the voucher program, just a few pointers on that, at 30,000 students instead of the previously noted 15,000. It will add back in homeschoolers, which it had previously removed in an amendment in the House. And participants would be eligible to receive an average of $7,300 annually in taxpayer funds to pay for private education not specified towards tuition. So those are key factors. So I don't know. I tried to review the video for committee up until I came into this meeting, and it has not been available. So we might know more later on this evening. An additional bill was House Bill 1276, Senate Bill 1035. It's come up on our radar as the TSBA bill. Representative Holt and Senator Gardenhire. It was a caption bill that was, the amendment made the bill last week. The amendment failed to get a second. They did not move the bill. This is the one that was a little controversial. On April 4th, Representative Sexton made a motion on the House floor to suspend the rules and bring the bill back before the full Education Committee, so that the Education Committee would vote today. This is again in the House, and the reason they did that, per the sponsor of the bill, was because the subcommittee, Education Subcommittee, was no longer going to meet. So they would have to hear it in the House full committee. It did not pass today, so it went back before the House full committee, Education full committee, and it did not move. It's my understanding, though, the intention of that legislation is to create accountability and transparency within TSBA. They want to create the same accountability components as TOS currently observes. So there's been some confusion on that piece of legislation, but it did not pass. Now, that's not to say the sponsor won't bring it up next year again.
Was that amendment on the amount of testing, did that stay in the Senate? Because it was on that amendment that that those that took took that and were in private school did not have to take the state test, only a norm reference test.
You're talking about House Bill 939, the ESA legislation.
Yeah.
It's my understanding there might be something to that. Part of the challenge is the website, the useful tool of the website, the legislative website, it's not updated. So you can't pull amendments. I've often had to call Mr. Torres at TSBA to try to get copies of amendments. We're
we're having better luck pulling them from publications than actually having access. I have actually called different representatives' offices who are sponsors of these pieces, and have not been able to get anybody. So it's been challenging getting any information, particularly the amendments. So the caption bills are what really concerns me personally, and the lack of transparency, if you will. So, so I do believe, to your point, that there is something to that, testing, minimizing it for those taking the voucher or ESA, but it's really a voucher. And finally, the one that I was watching was House Bill 1380, Senate Bill 1399, and that's Representative Williams, Senator Bell. It was arming teachers. The House sponsor decided to pull that piece of legislation. He's not going to pursue it. As far as I understand, the rest of this year, may bring it up again, wants to work with local law enforcement and find alternative ways to secure our schools. So,
So the arming teachers and the TSBA are gone, then no more opportunities for them to come back up, or?
As far as I understand, we thought that about House Bill 1276 last week, but they were able to do something on the House floor on Thursday, last Thursday. So barring no moves that we're not expecting, that's the way I understand it to be.
Ms. Johnson, do you know offhand what's the last day the legislature will be in session? Because I know it's kind of one of those.
There's really no way to determine that, from my opinion. It's all going to be based on the budget, as you well know. So I know that they're closing down subcommittees in the House. As I said, the Senate's Education Committee met for the last time today. So I would expect they're going to be winding down, but it's all going to be predicated on the budget.
I figure it'll be over by the end of April.
It's ambitious.
You know, if I saw something that may be good and may not, because they may combine it, but the House and the Senate bills were pretty far apart today on what they want. Now, they may just give it to all of them, who knows? But,
it's my understanding.
Let's hope they're arguing and we get away again.
It's my understanding, I could be wrong though, but that when they do something like this, they add an amendment in the Senate, they can hold off in the House until the Senate's finished doing what they want to do, and then they can adopt once it's been voted on in the Senate chamber. So it's still very active. I wouldn't say it's not active.
All right, is that it?
Just a question and a comment. The $7,300, and Ms. Johnson, I don't really expect you to answer this, and I should know myself, but is that like a one-time payment that occurs once for a student?
Once a year.
Once a year? So in order for that to work, that student's got roughly $3,600 for a semester. And I see now why they're estimating that it's going to cost $125 million in 5 years rather than this rather low figure that they're putting out now. Well, the question is pretty obvious, I guess, but what does the state send us per student? Well, give me a figure. Well, I want the additional 600 then for our children.
How that will impact us.
Okay. Right. Right. Well, my question is probably not necessarily a good one, and we can't get an accurate answer. I just want to make a comment. I've always remembered this for many years. I have a good friend, and remains a good friend, who was in the state legislature at one time. And the subject came up, and I imagine Mr. Spurlock and maybe others might, Mr. Hester might remember this, but the subject came up. The state wanted some money, and the place to get that money looked like for a while would be the teacher's pension fund. And we can borrow that money. Well, we know how that works. But anyway, they were going to borrow the money. Now, they didn't do it. All right, they did not do it, thank goodness. But I had a person in my presence, I did not ask it, asked this former legislator about, he said to him, you really can't do this. And he said, I'll never forget it, never. He said, you don't understand. We're the state legislature. We can do whatever we want. Good to remember that. Just commenting. Moving on, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Hodge, federal.
I basically just have one item. This federal's a whole lot harder to find articles. But the latest thing that I've got is, in regards to federal, was when our Secretary of Education DeVos made her visit down to Nashville. I think it's the 2nd of April, with the governor, and they had their round table. And the round table consisted of roughly 30 people. They were all voucher and charter people. I thought that was interesting that they didn't include any people against the vouchers. And there's a whole list in here of them, and it's not hard to figure out how the thing's shaking through down in Nashville. But I really think that with this 30,000 that the Senate's brought up today, I don't know what the end of this thing's going to be. And just reading this article there was 4 pro-voucher groups in this meeting, and I listened to the radio this morning, local station. One of our legislators basically said that the ESAs are savings accounts. They're not vouchers, so I don't know what else they are. But what I still have a rough time grasping is how are they savings accounts? To me, they look like they're spending accounts. Is basically what they are, and I'm having a rough time grasping this thing. But I think when it's all said and done, the rate we're going right now, it's I hate to say it, but I'm afraid it's going to be a disaster when we finally get there. And it'll be very costly for the local people. They can sit there and say all they want. It's not going to affect us, but I'm different on that deal. But, just reading the article, it was pretty interesting to see how all they had making the decision behind the doors. Let's see what it shakes out.
Thank you, sir. Like you've told us for years, we get vouchers, there's going to be a lot of students that don't get taken care of. They're not going to be able to use those.
Well, if I may, one of the problems that a lot of people aren't aware of, I haven't said, they're likely to put something in there or maybe not. There's no clawback provision in that. Once that money's gone, it's gone. And if our district, someone in our district were to leave to go to a private school or even homeschool, and their parent decides that's not a fit for them, they can come back to our district and the money's gone and we get no money, so we're in the hole. We have to educate that child. And I think we had a great presentation earlier on our special ed departments and the needs and things that we have, that our charter schools or private schools in this area will not be able to offer our children. Like she said, when we educate all, we educate all. And my hat's off to them. I don't know how they do it.
That $7,300 certainly is not going to pay for having to send a child out of state for that type of things. I think, again, that's a really good point, and I was thinking about the SPED thing too, that how are they going to pay for that with $7,300? So, public schools are getting blasted in the media right now, and I think it's sad that so many people out there don't see the things that we do. And I think the SPED presentation and please pronounce your last name for me. Kashibusky, thank you. Okay.
I wasn't even going to try it.
is a shining example of that the things that we do for our students, that so much of the public completely goes unnoticed or unrecognized by them. So,
I had to be on the first phone call when the parent calls the state and complains about performance of a private school for a student. I'd like to hear their answer and see how quickly they respond to that. when they're all over us, and rightfully so, to make sure that we provide what we're supposed to provide, which we do. I just don't think the parents are going to be very happy with that, and I'm still, if it's $3,650 per semester, what if that doesn't get it, and it won't get it? So they're going to have to come up with another $500 or another $1,000, or I haven't checked, you know, MBA and Brentwood Academy, and but private schools don't. These private schools don't even exist yet. That they're talking about. They'll see how much money they can get, and then they'll build a school. And you know, it's going to be. Well, Mr. Hodge used the word disaster. I think that is probably about right. Potential is certainly there for it anyway.
Mr. Chairman, are we in general discussion?
Sure.
Okay. All right. I'll make this quick, but I have something that I would like to make a statement on and go on record with this because it's something that has been bothering me and concerning me terribly these last few days. And I don't know if this is a policy thing that Ms. Page might want to look into. And I know we've got a policy meeting coming up in May. But when we talk about vendors that are submitting bids, RFPs, however you want to look at it, for business with the school system, from a purely personal, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, from a personal and ethical standpoint, I have a real issue with a vendor that's in the middle of an RFP process that would have someone reaching out individually to board members on that vendor's behalf to try to lobby not only for why their vendor ought to get this contract, but also casting aspersions against another vendor that's active in the process. I think this is absolutely, totally unethical and unacceptable. And quite frankly, if I were involved in the RFP process and that happened and it was my decision to make, they would automatically lose their standing in that process. So again, Ms. Page, I don't know, and I'd have to go back and look at, you know, the policy itself. I don't know if that's something that's factored in when we do bidding, but I never, in the 4.5 years that I have sat on this board, have I ever had a contractor or an office supply company or somebody that wants to sell us tech equipment for our audio-visual stuff reach out to me to try to lobby on behalf of their company or a company that they are associated with to convince me that that vendor needs to have that business. So I find that highly disappointing, and I just wanted to go on record with that tonight.
Anyone else? All right, we got a sheet. We've got some board meetings that have changed.
Did you get that?
Copy of that.
Did you get that? I didn't get it.
Oh, Ms. Michaels is hoarding them over there.
I don't want to hear that.
I believe she was wanting to cancel all of them.
We all know that's subject to change, right?
This is the time of year we don't have many times to reschedule meetings, and I don't know how we could get one more in somewhere. Oh.
Mr. Estes?
Is there any? Yes, sir.
I just, one of the things for y'all to remember, when I got with Ms. Michaels on scheduling meetings, there are some legal deadlines in the private act that governs our adoption of the budget that we have to meet, or we have to move forward with what we already have when those deadlines come, regardless. So we're getting close to starting to hit those deadlines. Just we lose latitude in moving meetings around, or we would have to do them at regular board meetings, which is fine with me. So.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Anyone else? Not, we'll be adjourned.